All right.
This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV on YouTube. It's been a while since we've done a UAP podcast, and this is actually going to be on the Wicked Alien YouTube channel as well because we have none other than Infinity Engineering book author Gene Sticco joining me again, former U.S. Air Force security expert, correct? And
Yeah.
you've been actually traveling all over the U.S. attending conferences in Washington, the East Coast. Some people are saying your wife may have been intentionally poisoned at one of these conferences. But before we get into that, how have you been? Catch us up on what you've been up to.
Good. Yeah. Good to see you. It feels like it's been forever since we've done one of these. Um, yeah, but I guess the highlights was back in December, right? What was it? What was it? Early January? I guess January, right? Second week in January. Um,
It's been a while. I
there
think
was
we had
the
everyone on for one.
Yeah, right, right.
Oh, sorry. I think
Um,
there's a delay in my. I think there's a bit of a delay today for some reason. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. I think when you pop back up. Yeah, so it was in DC for the Virginia UFO event. That was just amazing to be there. First of all, had a great time. We drove down with Ty Roberts from Total Disclosure Podcast, who doesn't live too far from me. And then on the way, we stopped in New Jersey, picked up Vito from Perfect Storm Gaming, and we had a boys' road trip down to DC. Met up with Joe Biscotto from UAP Reporting Center when we got there. He popped over, and then by the end of the night, it was the four of us: Gino Gentile from Y Files, Jeff Nucitelli. We were hanging out with him for the evening and talking all things going on in the
Oh,
UAP
the
space.
Jeff Nucitelli. For anyone that doesn't know, that's the guy that was one of the people that testified at the last hearing. Very
And so
credible person. I think he has a podcast now too. But I just had to throw that in there in case anyone didn't recognize the name. I really
yeah,
like that guy.
yeah, no, great guy. I mean, and I'll tell you, it's this is the benefit of going to stuff like this, because to have the opportunity to sit down one on one and to fill in blanks, right? Because so much of what we get, people go on, they do, an hour, 2, 3 hours sometimes of these interviews, right? And we just get clips and highlights. I doubt there's anybody that sits down and watches carefully all 3 hours of a recorded interview. You probably scroll through or you jump to, whatever section is on there that might interest you. But having the ability to sit with Jeff and ask like follow-up questions, things that when I hear the bits and pieces, I was like, that kind of doesn't make sense, or that doesn't make sense, or and then you're able to get the full context of it. So it really, it's great to meet people and have the ability to do that, because so much of what we get, I think, even from our own communities, still going through some kind of filter, and you just got to go have the conversations.
Yes, and one thing I'll bring up because it's a hot topic, we'll jump right into it before we get back into what you were doing in Washington. Was the news about Barack Obama kind of saying recently in a podcast that aliens exist, but they're not at Area 51. So, I mean, is that another step towards probably Trump is going to admit something before the end of his term? I've seen Trump's daughter-in-law say in a
Hmm.
recent podcast as well, she thinks it's kind of on the table for him to say, and he knows a lot more about it than he had known in the past. What do you make about what Barack Obama said, and what do you think of that?
Yeah. So again, I throw on my intel hat when I look at this, right? And I don't look at anything in isolation. I look at the entire chessboard, the entire playing field, as we have it right now. And there's a lot of interesting things that are converging at once. and given little insights and bits and pieces that you hear on the ancillary, on the side chats and whatnot. Um, it's an interesting picture that emerges. So, if we start, at the top level with Obama's comment and what he said, and then what he didn't say, right, which was they're not at Area 51. Um, but he didn't say where they are, right? You have to always remember politicians speak in terms that if you don't ask the right question the right way, the answer is not necessarily a lie or an omissions count. Omissions are not necessarily lies, and all the rest of it. But I think the big part of that was the definitive yes, the definitive they're real. So what does that mean then in the larger context of everything else that's going on the playing field? So we've got the rumors of, a summertime Donald Trump disclosure speech that's ready to go. I've seen May, I've seen July 8th. I think in July that's also during the
Hey, maybe
FIFA.
it'll happen at the White House UFC event in July.
It
Conor McGregor will be there for it.
it could be right. It could be, any of those scenarios exist. But I'm going to go back to a point I've made, I started making long ago, and I'm still consistent with. There has to be a political win. So if we look at the politics of everything that's going on right now as well, right, we're coming into midterm elections. Trump's favorable rating is down. He's lost favorability with younger crowds. Obviously, the Epstein files is taking a hit on overall issues like transparency and everything else. Midterms are generally a time when you see like the House and the Senate flip. By all indications, all polls, the Dems are already 5-6 points ahead, just in general in general polling. So whereas before, I was leaning more towards the 2027 as being more politically advantageous. There's sort of circumstances now in the larger context of things that you can see potentially a political win for the GOP by doing it now and or doing it during that summer time frame. He can piggyback, of course, if he goes for July, that'll be piggybacking off of the Spielberg film. So, what does that say about Obama and what Obama said? Well, again, nothing in politics happens in isolation, right? So, there could be a scenario that we're looking at here where the win win out of this is disclosure has to be a bipartisan. Yes, we are all saying that this is happening, and we're all saying that it's happening together, because the natural inclination of the Dems would be whatever Trump says is a lie and is obvious. But this is a tough issue to do that on, because again, we're talking about transparency. We're talking about a lot of bipartisanship that's already being exhibited on this issue. So Obama doing what he's doing now sets the stage for, come a Trump level disclosure that happens, then the Dems can say, well, see, Obama told you this months ago. What are you getting all excited about it for now? And it becomes a little bit of a win-win. The caveat to all of that is, or the other factor is that the Obama production company is producing a film for Netflix called The White Mountain, which is about the Betty and Barney Hill story in New Hampshire.
Wow, because
So,
that could mean a few things, right?
right. So now that I think that film's being more, I think in other discussions that he's had about it, while it's also the UFO issue, there's also the aspects of civil rights and the period in which that happened and the context. And I think that's why the Obama production company was behind it as well. There's no scheduled release date for it. And there's no real update on has it concluded and where it's at as far as its production. But if you think about it again, if we have a Spielberg summer blockbuster being queued up, Obviously, Spielberg is a Dem supporter, right? The Obamas aren't going to want to be uh, stealing any of his thunder, but a piece like that, like the Benny and Barney Hill story, could certainly, be a available on Netflix within the same time period, supporting piece that kind of lifts both of them up at the same time, let's say. So again, there's a win-win there. I mean, you know a little bit about the film industry and all that.
Yeah, and did you happen to see Eric Davis's interview on Soul? I found it so interesting. I watched it about 3 times because a concussion-filled mind like me takes a couple times for it to compute. But he basically went on record saying from all the research he's done, overall, there's not much evidence to show that these things are anything but malevolent when you look at the injuries that happen from not only the radiation from people coming into contact with UAPs and stuff, but from abductions, from them not telling us what they may have said something at Holloman Air Force Base, because he also did talk about it in that interview that
Yeah.
one of Bush's people accidentally told President George W. Bush that Holloman landing where they had interactions with ET. There was some communication, but overall, whatever they're doing, they're not asking for permission. And if they're so intelligent, why wouldn't they? But he was basically saying there's a lot of evidence here that they're malevolent, and I've even been reading a lot of Jacques Vallée's books lately, and some of these abduction stories are very frightening. Whether the intention is to frighten or not, you're being taken against your will and having operations done on you against your will in many cases. But he also said this could be programming that's being implanted into our heads by governments, and it might not actually be happening. This might actually be a combination of holograms and testing by they're somehow testing stuff on our brains and making us imagine that this stuff happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we've got, you've got the issue of the different species, of aliens that are out there. The Was it 7 species or more potentially, whatever the case might be. I think the important thing to do is just take a step back, right, and admit we don't know what we don't know, and we really don't know all of these things, or at least we don't have confirmation of it, one way or another at this point, right? I don't think all of this will be resolved with with an Oval Office speech. Again, I think it is whatever we get is going to be the first part of a long, slow rollout. Um, this Obama comment, again, I've seen it already on Time Magazine and USA Today. And so it's, hitting mainstream media. So again, it could potentially be a little bit of a litmus test on how much traction does it get, how much follow-up does it get. Um, the artwork behind me, that is actually just a print of the I'll say it correctly, the Van Gogh
It,
painting.
it's not done by the Russian aliens that passed it to your father-in-law, that passed it to your
No,
wife,
no,
who passed it to the house.
no. I think we got that at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. We got a couple of pieces there. So I used to live in the Netherlands. I used to go to the Van Gogh Museum all the time. Um,
You've
uh,
done it all. You're the real Forrest Gump, but
yeah,
the intelligent version of Forrest Gump.
I feel like it sometimes. Yeah. But yeah,
Hey, and you mentioned
I could do a
bipartisan for
whole
the
show on Dutch
alien.
artists, Vermeer, all of them.
Mentioning bipartisan for the alien, I just got to throw it in there. Don't you hate that wrestling has somehow become extremely political these days?
It
It used to
had.
be bipartisan. It used to be an escape, and
Yeah.
now we got to go to aliens if we want that, because wrestling is full of political messages and political fighting now.
I know,
Sadly,
again, people think, that's what sells. Listen, it happened, it's going on in the opera world too. And even in, some of the arts I've seen, the shows, the operas that get staged, all of a sudden every villain is, orange skinned, blonde haired. And even the LA Times, there was a writer on that who came out and was like, I had enough of the news. I wanted to go to the opera and enjoy a night out, and all I got was a reinterpretation of the news. So I'm done with it. So yeah, I think in the same way. But the one other thing that I find interesting going on now too, Hannibal, and we say it in wrestling sometime, right? We're going back to the classics, right? In UAP, it's like Knapp kicked off the Mystery Wire series, which was a relaunch of what he had done before. He, pulled out the Russian UFO stories. I don't even call them files because all he has is stories that were already old in 1993 in Russia. And he's retelling those. Now they're retelling Bob Lazar. Now Obama's coming back, circling circling back around.
Yes, because he appeared on Jay Leno years ago
Right.
claiming that he knew nothing about aliens, but that was the first thing that he asked about when he got into office. And Bill Clinton had also said something on talk shows in the past. So, yeah, you're right. We're circling back now.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, this is the stuff the public has to be aware of when they're worried about, counterintelligence operations and narrative control and everything else, right? This is what you do. Let's just reset and go back to the beginning in Bob Lazar. Let's stir up the nostalgia of the everything from Bob Lazar. Throw in a little something new, where we're still talking about 40-year-old files that Knapp could have been talking about in 1993, but didn't. Um, and let's just recycle the stories all over again until whatever they're prepping in the background, if there is this new whistleblower or whatnot. And I had done a space on it not long ago, and I think a couple of folks that were on there, I think I see their faces in the chat. Just talk about again the politics of the time right now, and this idea that we're going into midterm elections. So if we're not happy with what's been done, then this is our opportunity as constituents to challenge and push back against the people who are in those positions, and demand from them why they deserve the vote if they've failed on some things like the UAP Disclosure Act. They've failed on it 3 times now. Why do you deserve another chance? And then find the people that are either running against them, in the midterms, or want to primary them before the midterms, even within the party, right? We have choices politically to make. So let's get more people together to, start acting like, the voter base and the constituency out there, and challenge these and make it an issue and make them, answer the questions about why this stuff fails and who is actually blocking it. And if they're not willing to do it, let's go ask their challengers, are they willing to do it?
What are your thoughts on the whole airport 10-day? I think it may have been shortened by now, but the 10-day closure in El Paso, Texas, apparently without warning to any of the local authorities there. Supposedly part of the reason might be due to drones. Some people, I don't know if they're just trying to get stories, are hinting it may have to do with UAP activity, which could be considered drones as well. But
Yeah.
do you think there's more to it than that, or is it just a military issue that really, for our own safety, they shouldn't be telling us everything they know about it?
No, I mean, I think you have to tell everything you know about it because it affected such a um, public space, right? It's commercial air traffic, commercial people's flights, all the rest of it shut down for 10 days. You can't, there can't be any excuses in that. And they had to know that going into it. And if they're fumbling around to give an answer, um, then, again, to me, that just sort of raises more concerns about what the actual nexus of it was, whether it was UAP related. Was it, Mexican cartel drones violating the airspace and they missed them? I think something like I can't imagine even a military exercise they would close down unannounced. airspace like that for 10 days, right? I mean, I can see certain windows, certain, they'll move a couple flights around. They'll cancel some flights that aren't selling well if they need to occupy that airspace. But something unexpected definitely happened. And so, they have to come clean on a clear, definitive answer of what it was.
And as far as what you were doing in Washington, obviously something happened to your wife. Why have people been messaging me? Because I guess they know that you appear on my channel and stuff. And I sent you one of them that was one of the more detailed ones. People think that because your wife passes information to you, you now have it out in your book, which people can get at the website. And you're also sharing the information on podcasts. Why do some people think she was intentionally
Mm.
poisoned by some type of agency?
Well, so there are a number of circumstances surrounding the period of illness, which, when you look at them holistically, paint a picture that is certainly concerning. Um, and so what she experienced was called toxic encephalopathy. It was from a concentrated exposure of particular molds. These particular molds are not normally found together. They're not normally found in a home in the concentration at which they are found. The period in which she got sick, depending upon the so we know, when she got sick, I should say, working backwards, the exposure time frame would have been the Monday and Tuesday prior, which is when I was in DC. Um, as I was as I went to go look at video of the night, I had to have the ambulance come. There was 72 hours of time when the camera wasn't working. When I went to go look at the camera, the infrared on the camera had been smashed out. You could see there was a pressure point, and you can kind of see the cracks around that sensor. Just prior to me going to DC, we had actually reached out. She was in contact with the physicist in Russia, who was actually George Knapp's source that helped him organize all of the meetings back in 1993. So that was sort of, prior to me going to DC. We're, talking with him. Then I go to DC, then I come back, and that weekend she takes frighteningly ill, um, to the point in the moment, in the first couple of days, I was like, "This is gonna be life-changing," and I don't see, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Um, and then all of a sudden, the, sort of light switches and changes, and it's like, okay, there's got to be something environmental happening here, and some other people, made some suggestions which led us down the road of having the toxicology checked. And then the other fact of the particular molds, mycotoxins as they're called, is that there is a history both involving the CIA and KGB using these, both in research and, you know, uh, uh, targeted, events. Um, so it's there's nothing that's criminal that we can, point on that's definitive. There's a lot of strange things that happened that all seem to coalesce within this time period. They could be unrelated. It, if nothing else, has caused us to certainly, reevaluate home security and our outer, awareness out and about and whatnot. Um, and so that's what we're, that's what we're doing. We're just used it as a, if it's not what it feels like, then we'll call it an exercise, a tabletop exercise. Fortunately though, she's home, she's doing well, she's feeling better. We've got
You had a nice Valentine's Day, it sounds like.
we had a yeah, we got back out again, got back out again early last week. We had a lovely Valentine's Day yesterday. Just before this, we were at a symphony up in Salem, Mass. The Salem Symphony. One of Natalia's a pianist that she works with was featured as a soloist, so we went up there and we enjoyed a lovely Sunday of classical music, and had a nice dinner. And now I'm sitting with my buddy Hannibal. What could be better?
Who has not had dinner yet, but what did you have, by the way?
Ribs. We went and I found a new steak. Yeah, it was like a steakhouse.
Oh,
I
very
had,
good.
I had a good thing of ribs and cornbread and mac and cheese, and that had a filet mignon. So
Excellent. Well, the other thing that's in the news kind of today is these pictures. Angry astronauts been talking about them in Wisconsin. There's a UAP wave with UAP looking like this. These look something that we could easily make these days, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be UAP. What are your
yeah,
thoughts on these?
no, I agree. I think the idea that a lot of what we see now and a lot of what certainly Arrow is looked into is ours, is prosaic, is they can show them the tech, and it's highly secretive. I think I don't know if our friend Whistling Mike is out there in the audience watching or whatever. He'd certainly have deeper insights into particularly triangle formations in that part of the country. Um, so I don't have any doubts about that. I think the thing is that, with all of this, we have to continue to look at the science and trace it backwards. And, that's the crux of my work with my father in law's papers that's in the Engineering Infinity in the book. Is this question of origins, and when did we start down these roads, and what inspired us and got us there, and more importantly, what informed us to be able, to get to this point. When I don't think we've talked since the Venezuela operation happened,
No.
um, and the the EMPs and the weapons that were revealed in that. And I've said it in other forums. If the US is talking about it now and saying, here's the stuff we've got, that means that it is at the end of its life cycle, and they have already begun to operationalize the next generation of advanced technologies.
Yeah,
So,
you wouldn't need the most advanced stuff over there in Venezuela at this point.
no, exactly. I mean, it was a display. It was a message to our friends and particularly adversaries. I think even the timing, of the Chinese visit, because some people were questioning, oh, was he, trying to get the Chinese too or whatever. Personally, I think the Chinese knew that the operation was going to happen, and were hopeful that by having diplomats, there meeting with Maduro, that was, excuse me, that would potentially throw off the time frame, because that's all you need is throw something off by 5 hours. The weather could change, and then throw it off another week. But obviously that did not deter him in any way too. So again, big headline messages: nothing happens in isolation, right? Everything that you're looking at, every move somebody makes, whether it's militarily, whether it's a whistleblower, Knapp and Corbell, Obama, nothing is happening in isolation, and it's all about new positions on the chessboard.
Were you surprised? I think you sent it to me, but I do watch her show all the time, and I've had her as a guest. Christina Gomez did a feature about one of our interviews, kind of featuring you. What did you think about that? And thanks for doing that, Christina. If you see this,
Yeah, no, I mean that's great. It's good to good to see somebody thought what we did is newsworthy, and willing to bring it out there. Um,
And I think Knapp finally mentioned you recently, right? And you were on with Ross Coulthart not too
I
long
don't
ago as well. I
I don't
think
know if
since
Knapp's mentioned me. I haven't heard that
okay,
one yet, but
okay, maybe I'm confused with something else.
yeah, but I was on with Ross. That aired in December, early second third week in December. Um, Yeah, so that was great. I got to meet Megan Medic, her as producer there while we were in DC as well. I sat next to her, got to wave hello to Ross while they were getting all set up.
Was Lou Elizondo there? Did you get to catch up with him at all?
No, he wasn't. I had reached out to him. I think he had hoped to be there, but he just wasn't able to make it with his business commitments.
So as we wrap it up here, what should we be what should we be on the lookout for and following that you think is actually worth following? Because I mean, I'm seeing new stuff of Greer with the burst of spear today. I'm so sick of seeing that junk. I
Yeah,
mean, the other thing I saw someone sent it to me with good intentions today was George Knapp talking about the aliens used as soul containers. They're presenting this as new. I mean,
right.
I've been following that theory for a long time too, and it's one of the theories that Jacques Vallée talks about that somehow we contain souls either for them or they're not able to have souls or something, and they try and steal them from us. I really don't understand it. Do you have any thoughts on that? That's some fairly advanced thinking as well. But I think Knapp says that he saw some documentation about that when he was at Area 51.
Yeah, and very well there might be lots of documentation about lots of different aspects of this and all the rest of it. Um, so again, you can I try to not go down the rabbit holes. I try to, kind of pull back as much as I can to the 100,000 foot view and just keep a look at, how the pieces are moving. I think what we're seeing now, if again from that 100,000 foot view, right? the the more we start seeing other countries raising the issue, right? And we've talked about it before. I think we got what Brazil, Japan, the UK, I think some other South American countries coming
There
out
is
more.
some crazy stuff that's happened in Brazil, and I've been researching that too, where people in the past, in like the early 80s, have been shot with like UAP lasers that over 6 hours, their skin like falls off the bone in chunks till they eventually die, but they're not necessarily in pain. But it's
Yeah,
like there's no blood or anything. And then because there's no doctors in these areas, they were just written off. Oh, radiation poisoning. Let's
yeah,
bury them. And now
yeah.
we only find out about it years later. But there's a lot of crazy stuff that's happened there. And some people have hinted that that could be military tactics too being
Could
blamed
be.
on UAPs, but who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I think I saw some stuff recently on Colombia too. Um, so again, and then we've got like New Jersey and Vermont have both, had it made headlines about state-sponsored UAP research programs. So again, the more we see the institutions at government levels, having not just having these discussions, but setting up structures around UAP investigations. That all feeds into something I've described before as transition by design. This rollout to get the larger society more familiar and more uh, used to destigmatizing, UFO, for those that have that stigma attached to it. So this is the transition out of what we've always called controlled disclosure into transition by design. I guess in a sense, this Obama piece again, if it gets teeth and traction and follow up, will be a big precursor, let's say, to more of it, more government officials coming out again, not just from the U.S. but internationally as well. Paul Stonehill talks about this a lot. I've seen a lot of his comments. Paul's 40 years Russian ufology. And he talks about, nothing's going to happen unilaterally from the US. Russia and China would certainly have to be, on board to a degree too. So we got to start looking for the signals from that as well. So there's a lot of high level maneuvering and positioning that I think we all have to focus on more than the detail, because we tend to all look in that one direction as everything else gets shuffled around the board, and we lose sight of the bigger picture. And I'm trying to do some work now to figure out how to kind of keep that high level and share it, and so I'm putting some thoughts and efforts into how to do that.
And you're talking about all this information about your studying from your father-in-law's research. Fans can find that on engineeringinfinitybook.com. It's right at the bottom of your screen. And thank you very much for catching us up. And I'll let you
Yeah,
close this
thanks.
off with whatever you want to plug or tell the fans. But I appreciate it because you are very optimistic, as one of the fans said, and you're very knowledgeable. And although you do have a book that has a lot of great information for the people that can understand it, but I know you try to make it as simple as possible. You're knowledgeable on everything to do with UAPs, pretty much. So I
And
appreciate it.
well, it's been like drinking through a fire hose. So there's a lot of history, and again, I'm relatively new to the subject. So, sometimes a fresh perspective, or even a different perspective, where I come out from, of all of this, because I think there is a lot of good stuff happening and a lot of good people involved in it. Just gotta, as it's often said, separate signal from noise, and have a little bit of discipline, and so I guess that's what I try to do. But yeah, I appreciate it. It's always great catching up with you. The Engineering Infinity book. I've got my other book, Unconventional, a true story of oil, intelligence, and consequence. That's available on barnesandnoble.com. If you just go Barnes and Noble and put in my name, you'll find that. And that is about my experience, working intelligence in the oil and gas industry. I kind of call that my origin story.
Very interesting. Finish us off with a promo. So and give us a pose for the screenshot. Thanks a
Okay,
lot.
I'll give you one better. I've taken back my pirate moniker.